Welcome back, America. Representative Mike Gallagher is chairman of the House Select Committee on the engagement with the Chinese Communist Party, and he's back from Taiwan. Good morning, Congressman. Welcome home. What did you see? What do we need to know?
Well, it's always great to visit our friends in Taiwan. Taiwan, as you know, just went through an election, the first democratic society of, I think, 41. They're going to be going to the polls this year. And despite relentless attempts by the Chinese Communist Party to interfere with that election, to meddle with the results via bots online, threatening to rip up trade deals if their preferred party didn't get elected, the Taiwanese people succeeded. It's a remarkably free society thriving in the shadow of authoritarian aggression. And I think we can derive some lessons from that for our own upcoming election. One is that it would be a bad idea to allow CCP-controlled or influenced applications like TikTok to play such a dominant role in our news ecosystem. The time is now to either ban or force a sale of TikTok before it influences an election or even affects our sense of national identity, pitting Americans against Americans, which, of course, is the CCP strategy to mess with us domestically. The second thing I'd say, Hugh, is that we still aren't doing enough to speed up the delivery of weapons that the Taiwanese have purchased under the foreign military sales process. This is a key point, Hugh. Taiwan is a very successful country. It's a powerhouse, a superpower when it comes to microchip manufacturing. They're not asking for charity. They've purchased weapons from us. We just can't deliver them. The backlog has not gotten any better. We need to be moving heaven and earth to arm Taiwan to the teeth and explore creative options like co-production with the Taiwanese on certain systems that we don't need to be producing everything domestically. We can share technology and have them produce some of it domestically. So there was good, there was bad, there was ugly in the trip, but we have amazing friends on the ground in Taiwan, and we need to stand strong against increasing CCP aggression.
You know, Chairman Gallagher, I was with some former Trump administration national security officials this past weekend, one of whom is a big advocate of going to our, quote, ghost fleet, close quote, and sending everything that we've got mothballed to them, including the LCSs we're already retiring, including the A-10s that are going to run out of flight time, including every munition that's got a shelf life. Have we done that?
No, we have not. And an idea that is related to that we have not sufficiently explored is the idea of containerizing fires and putting them on ships that effectively act as weapons barges, which could eventually be autonomous. So you think about, like, we have these precision guided munitions. They need to be fired from something. Imagine them being inside of something that looks a lot like a Connex box. It could be put on a ship. It could be put on land. By the way, it could be right next to identical looking Connex boxes that could be empty. It would create a nightmare for People's Liberation Army planners. That's the type of creativity we need. And as we've talked about before, Hugh, now that we are no longer bound by the constraints of the Intermediate Nuclear Forces Treaty, we have the ability to put in place ground and launch systems throughout the first and second island chain in the Indo-Pacific. We can get very creative and do to the Chinese what they've done to us over the last 20 years, which is use relatively low-cost missiles to keep our ships at bay. And at the end of the day, we just have to have the capability, to paraphrase the former Democratic administration Undersecretary of Defense Michelle Flournoy, to put the entire PLA Navy fleet on the bottom of the Taiwan Strait within 72 hours. That's sort of the Manhattan Project we must commit ourselves to.
Now, Chairman Gallagher, part of that would require the funding that is in the supplemental that presently sits lost in the House. I have a Fox News column today saying, make them an offer they can't refuse. The Washington Post reported this week that building the wall on the southern border is now more popular than ever. It's got a very strong majority. What do you think about, there are a couple of things in the Ukraine funding that have to be stripped out. Senator Cotton says we shouldn't be funding their government. We should be sending them weapons, and I can understand that amendment. What about adding an amendment on the border, specifically the wall, as a means of bringing more votes onto the supplemental?
Well, I read your op-ed, Hugh, and I got to say, whoever ghostwrites these things for you is very smart. I know you didn't go to schools that would allow you to dictate prose like that, but I was very impressed nonetheless. I agree. I mean, listen, the crisis continues to get worse. A wall is a critical part of the solution. I would like to go further. I mean, I'm an ardent supporter of HR2, and there's some niche things that I wonder you would have a legal perspective on. For example, our immigration court judges don't even have contempt authority. So they're not able to even enforce order in their court, or when people overstay their court order, they can't do anything about it. So there would be other things I'd like to see in an ideal bill that fundamentally secures the southern border. But in such a compromise bill, I do think it's reasonable for us to request a border wall. The crisis continues to get worse, even in districts like mine, which is far removed geographically from the southern border. We feel the chaos and the death and the destruction, particularly related to fentanyl, every single day. So the time is now to act. I think it's reasonable for us to insist on such a concession from the White House. Thus far, however, President Biden has seemed like he just wants to demagogue the issue and use it as a cudgel in an election year rather than actually coming to the table with serious solutions.
Yeah, that's why I want to make them an offer they can't refuse. And if they turn down the border wall, the mask is off. They're not really about border security. And I think this visit today is silly. But I don't think your visit to Taiwan was silly. Who went with you? And I am curious about whether or not you think the Taiwanese are rebuilding their defensive capability on a daily basis. Are they expanding it almost daily?
Who went with me? It was a bipartisan trip. My ranking member, Raja Krishnamoorthi, came, as did Democrat from Massachusetts, Seth Moulton. We had Dusty Johnson, Republican from South Dakota. We had John Moolenaar. So it was a truly bipartisan trip, which is great. I mean, to send that signal of support to our friends in Taiwan, I think is important for the committee to do that. As to whether they're rebuilding their defense industrial base on a daily basis, one positive sign is that President Tsai, the outgoing president, has increased the mandatory service requirement from 4 months to 1 year, and is trying, with our help, to implement very realistic training for the Taiwanese that have to serve their country for that extended period of time. I think Israel has a lot of lessons that Taiwan could learn from in this regard. We're still not doing enough. And to get back to the point I made earlier, my sense is that the defense establishment, the political leadership in Taiwan want to go faster. They want to go farther. We, however, have to do a better job of providing them the weapons that they have purchased. I was very positively impressed after my meeting with the president-elect, William Lai. I think he's going to be a great partner for the United States going forward. He intends to continue and build off of the defense policies of President Tsai. So that's very good for America. That's good for peace and stability in the Indo-Pacific more broadly. But again, it just takes leadership at the Department of Defense here in America. Really, you have to fight your own bureaucracy to get some of this stuff done. And we're just not attacking it with a sense of urgency. We're not doing it as if, World War III depended on it. And it very well might. We have to deter it.
Chairman Gallagher, your
hard,
people are yelling at me already because you got a hard out at 43. So I want to ask you one last question. Do you think that China is leaning into an invasion before the transition to a new president? Is there a sense of urgency on the island that the threat is real and immediate?
I think there is a sense of urgency. My own argument for some time has been that we entered the window of maximum danger with the election last month, and things will get most acute the closer we get to an election, and also the conditions for a cross-strait invasion, which are never great, by the way. This is a very hard thing to do, get better about 4 months from now. And so I really think we could be heading into, the mother of all October surprises if we don't put in place a deterrence by denial posture. More broadly, I think this decade is when Xi Jinping will try to make a move to realize his lifelong ambition. Things get much harder for him demographically in the 2030s, and he also gets much older, though that has not prevented American politicians from staying.
I'm glad I came up with that term, the mother of all October surprises. I'm going to patent that. That's mine. Chairman Gallagher, good to see you. The mother of all October surprises. You just took that from me and ripped it out of my mouth, and I sent you that in my notes. Honest to goodness, these Wisconsin people. The mother of all October surprises. Thank you, Chairman Gallagher. What should we sue him, Dwayne, when he steals a phrase that we